In this video, we'll be deep diving into the Genesis album, soak in soul-stirring tunes, but also unravel the mysteries hidden within the cassette tape. In October 1982, the Genesis lineup of drummer-singer Phil Collins, keyboardist Tony Banks, and guitarist-bassist Mike Rutherford, with live drummer Chester Thompson and live guitarist Daryl Stuermer, wrapped their 2-month tour of North America and Europe in support of the band's third live album, 3 Sides Live. They had also performed a one-off gig titled Six of the Best, with original Genesis frontman and singer Peter Gabriel and former guitarist Steve Hackett to raise funds for Gabriel's World Music Festival WOMAD after it ran into financial trouble. Genesis then entered a period of inactivity, during which the band pursued their solo projects. In the spring of 1983, the band reconvened at their studio, named The Farm in Chiddingfold, Surrey, to start work on a new studio album, their first since Abacab, 1981. Genesis became their first album written, recorded, and mixed in its entirety at the studio room. Previously, they had to write in an adjoining space. Having the group work in their own space without the additional pressure of booking studio time and fees resulted in a more relaxed environment. They were joined by engineer Hugh Padgham, who had also worked on Abacab, but this time carried out production duties themselves, with Jeff Callingham offering technical assistance. Rutherford recalled an initial period of slow and sluggish progress, but after a particularly productive session on the third day, they had 2 or 3 songs worked out, which increased their interest and excitement towards the album and in performing the new material on stage. Before the sessions began, the group considered the idea of Banks, or Rutherford, taking on a lead vocal on the album, but opted out as they had developed material with Collins's voice in mind. Banks said that he and Rutherford take a more prominent role in the backing vocals on Genesis than previous albums. Banks explained the album was the result of the group's decision to write an album and record it in one go from start to finish. The group considered their strongest material had been put together collectively, so they decided to make an entire album in such a way as opposed to developing someone's prearranged ideas. Before, each member would contribute fully or partially arranged songs, which restricted development or suggestions from the other members. This time, tracks came about through jamming and improvisations in the studio that were recorded onto tape, ensuring the band remained unified and kept songs fresh. Banks noted that this made recording more exciting and spontaneous. This collaborative effort marked a return for Genesis, crediting each member for writing the album as opposed to listing individual credits, which they had not done since The Lamb Lies Down on Broadway, 1974. The collaborative effort also had an influence on the album's title, as the group were unable to come up with a suitable name. So they used Genesis to emphasize the fact that it was written collectively. The main keyboards that Banks used on the album are the Prophet 10 Synclavier, an EMU emulator, a Yamaha CP70 electric grand piano, and an ARP Quadra on Mama. At one point on the album, a sample from the soundtrack to 2001, A Space Odyssey 1968, is used. Collins said, "You play a chord and a half of it's going at half the speed and part at twice the speed. Sounds beautiful." Collins plays on a Simmons electronic drum kit. Genesis displays the group moving toward shorter, more straightforward, and radio-friendly songs. Rutherford said that the band had gone as far as they could with their progressive and art rock direction that they had adopted since the early 1970s, and wanted to write and record in a more relaxed approach as previously. The band was more driven to present what they had to offer. Banks considered the music and overall sound of Genesis something that the band had longed for many years prior, specifically its more aggressive edge. He described Side 1 as the main act, while Side 2 has the character pieces. The song Mama features a Linn electronic drum machine. Mama originated during a group jam session where Rutherford was experimenting with a Linn LM1 electronic drum machine fed through a gated reverb and a Mesa Boogie amplifier, and turned up incredibly loud to the point of amplifiers jumping off the studio floor. Collins was influenced to go for a vocal that resembled John Lennon's style on his cover of Bebop-A-Lula on the song's verses. His laugh was influenced by the 1982 song The Message by hip-hop band Grandmaster Flash and the Furious Five, which features a similar sound. Padgham had brought the single to the band, and upon hearing it, Collins did the laugh during the subsequent improvisation session for Mama, which the band liked and wished to use in the song. The group had doubts as to whether Collins could recreate the laugh on stage, but he had no problems. When it came to picking a song as the album's lead single, Rutherford expected Genesis manager Tony Smith and record label staff to pick another track than Mama, but said full marks to them. They agreed we should go with something that was a bit different. Rutherford later rated Mama as one of the best songs on the album and was pleased with its commercial performance after the band found singles chart success with a song that represented what Genesis were all about at the time. During one session, the band had a koto in the studio, which was recorded through the EMU emulator and used as a sample for the song's percussion effect, partly because Banks had tried other options and could not get another sound to fit. The song That's All originated from Banks's simple piano riff, which was followed by a drum pattern that instantly gave off a mood that the band wanted to develop further. Each member cited the Beatles as an influence for the song. Collins said his drumming was in tribute to the style of their drummer, Ringo Starr, one of his drumming influences. The organ solo is played using a preset on the synclavier imitating a Hammond B3 organ, despite the reverse seen in the song's music video. Banks's riff came about from taking a sample in the EMU emulator and playing two notes of it simultaneously, which generated a new one. The song, Home by the Sea, tells the story of a burglar who breaks into a house only to find it is haunted by ghosts, who capture him and then force him to listen to their life stories. Collins had repeated the phrase, home by the sea, while putting down dummy vocals at a time when Banks was writing lyrical ideas and used the phrase to conjure up the story. The song originated with the band playing along to their Linn drum machine, during which Banks and Rutherford devised a guide theme on the keyboard and guitar, respectively, and Collins a vocal outline. With the guide parts laid out, the band then had a format as to its mood and how the song would take shape and developed it into a complete track. When the three were happy with what came out from it, they re-recorded the song individually onto tape, with Collins replacing the Linn drum tracks with his own. The former track segues into Second Home by the Sea, a mostly instrumental piece developed from a group improvisation that began with Collins playing a drum riff, which Banks and Rutherford liked and joined in. The working title was Heavy Simmons, a reference to Collins playing. Banks said the group spent around 2 hours jamming on the idea on one day, followed by a second jam of equal length on the next. They then took the parts from both jams they liked best and organized them into one cohesive arrangement, which required them to relearn what they had put down to record it as one piece. Banks said the loose idea behind the instrumental section was to represent the former lives of the ghosts. The track ends with a reprise of Home by the Sea. Guitarist-bassist Mike Rutherford wrote the lyrics on side 2, except for one track, Illegal Alien, with lyrics from Rutherford, is about illegal immigrants and their attempts to cross the border into the United States for a better life. Collins aimed for a more adventurous style of drumming and went through a number of different styles, noting what he ended up playing was perhaps more than what the song called for. The chosen style was that basic rock and roll part 2 and 4 on the snare, 1 and 3 on the bass. That's what made the tune work. It opens with sound effects of car horns and telephones that Banks played on his EMU emulator synthesizer, which he found particularly exciting to record and incorporate into the music. Collins felt more pleased with his drumming on Mama and Illegal Alien than on the band's more intricate tracks, such as Los Endos from A Trick of the Tail. Banks denied any racist implications the song appeared to have towards Mexicans, but said it is a tongue-in-cheek thing, and in fact, more sympathetic towards immigrants. The song, Silver Rainbow, has lyrics written by Banks, who wrote about people being senseless when they are in love. Collins described them as romantic and lush. Its working title was Adam because it had a rhythm that the group felt resembled something by singer Adam Ant, and the band thought a lyric that matched the juvenile music would fit it best. The song, It's Gonna Get Better, features a keyboard introduction that Banks sampled from an album of classical music for cello, following a failed attempt to use it to obtain a quality string sound on his keyboard. He then played 4 notes simultaneously, using the same sample that unexpectedly created a sound of interweaving harmonies, which he kept and used. The cover art was designed by English artist Bill Smith, who had also produced the artwork on Abacab. The front photograph originates from shapes from his 1-year-old son's shape sorter toy that were left on the carpet after he had gone to bed. Genesis was released on 3rd October 1983 and distributed by Charisma and Virgin Records in the United Kingdom and by Atlantic Records in the United States. It reached number 1 on the UK Albums Chart for 1 week from 15 October 1983 during a 51-week stay on the chart, and re-entered the chart for a total of 15 weeks between 1984 and 1987. The album peaked at number 9 on the Billboard 200 during a 49-week stay. In the United Kingdom, the album reached gold certification by the British phonographic industry on the day of release for shipment of 200,000 copies. In December 1983, the album reached platinum certification, and in October 1987, reached double platinum, the latter for selling 600,000 copies. 4 singles from the album were released between August 1983 and June 1984. A 12-inch single was released with longer versions of Mama and It's Gonna Get Better, the edit for the latter containing an extra verse and chorus. Genesis filmed promotional music videos for Mama and Illegal Alien, both of which were filmed back-to-back on the same film set. Critical reception. In his feature article on the band and the album in a September 1983 edition of Sounds, writer Bill Black described Genesis as an at times frustrating cocktail of the sassy songwriting that Collins' solo albums apparently brought into the band's songs, spiced with tantalizing reminders of the band's more progressive and art rock past. He was critical of It's Gonna Get Better, summarizing it as pure formula, and compared its backtracked keyboard sound to Cosmic Elgar, but rated Mama as savage as you're likely to get with post-Gabriel Genesis, and a notable departure from their earlier songs. The caring reviewer determined that for this album, Genesis have traded technical complexity and ingenuity for an altogether more stunning simplicity, making a Genesis album for people who normally hate Genesis, and great music for the masses. In his retrospective review for AllMusic, Stephen Thomas Erlewine criticized the album for lacking coherency, but found that a majority of the tracks are outstanding, balancing such sleek, pulsating pop tunes as That's All with a newfound touch for aching ballads. He also praised the band completely redefining themselves as a pop group. In 1985, the album received a Grammy Award nomination for Best Rock Performance by a Duo or Group with Vocal, while Second Home by the Sea was nominated for Best Rock Instrumental Performance. Mike Rutherford referred to this album as one of his favorite Genesis albums. So there you have it, the real story behind Genesis' shocking 1983 reinvention that divided fans and critics alike. This wasn't just an artistic transformation, it was a cultural shockwave. Genesis went from cult prog heroes to mainstream pop giants, embracing studio wizardry like sampling and drum machines to craft a hugely accessible sound. And then there was the controversy around tracks like Illegal Alien, an insensitive misstep that rightfully drew accusations of stereotyping Mexican immigrants. It exposed an uglier side that many felt undercut their new widespread appeal. Whether you see Genesis as bold innovators or unabashed sellouts, there's no denying they kicked an enormous hornet's nest with this polarizing album. They willingly traded prog artistry for pop commercialism and paid the price with an alienated fan base. The backlash was severe, with former devotees crying betrayal and Latino activists protesting their racial stereotyping. Even at their peak success, Genesis' hungry compromise had left a sour taste. Love them or hate them, you can't unsee the unvarnished reality I've laid out here. This saga ripped the veil off one of rock's revered bands, exposing them to intense scrutiny. So where do you stand? Adamant defenders or harsh critics of Genesis' dramatic transformation? The impassioned debate rages on over whether this was genius or simply a bridge too far. Click on this video to discover the secrets hidden within the next cassette tape. Save this channel by subscribing. Rock on.